Great evening. This is your girl Key. This is just a quick live before I ride my bike home to talk about scapegoats, truth tellers, and people who tend to say it as it is, and how best you can look after yourself, because sometimes people who say it as it is can often become the scapegoat. So you become the center of attention where people can focus their blame, and often that can mean that life can be pretty difficult for you as people want to make you the person who names things the problem rather than looking at the problem in and of itself. I hope that makes sense to people, because I guess I know what I'm talking about. So if you find that you're the someone, often what happens, like over many years of therapy, I've come to see this pattern happen again and again and again, that sometimes in some families, for example, it can show up in families, people who say it as it is or tell the truth can often be sanctioned or punished or penalized for being able for going against the code. And that can be very difficult for that person. And if that speaks to you, if you often find yourself in situations where you say things as you see it and then you feel penalized, and that can also happen in our intimate relationships. So if you're the person who sees a little issue and then you bring it to somebody's attention, often, and it's a form of manipulation. So I think what we also need to say is that if you are the scapegoat, then it's a form of manipulation. It's a form of taking our attention off the true source, for example, say someone's behavior, and then we're going to focus all our attention on you, pick you apart so that you are the problem. So actually what happens to people who name things is that they become a part of the problem. And if that speaks to you, that can be very difficult. And it also depends on the way that you're sanctioned, in terms of how people sanction you, how you are punished. Now, that can also be impacted by your own level of power. So if this speaks to you and you know where I'm coming from, it may sound a bit cryptic, then inbox your girl Key, because this can have disastrous impacts on your autonomy, your capacity to be able to articulate yourself, articulate your concerns. It can also end up making you mute, so you don't speak. You suck it up or you bottle it up. And as a seasoned practitioner, this is something that I see time and time again, which is one of the reasons why I've decided to do a live on this topic, because it affects a lot of us when we are naming truths and then being penalized for that. That's in fact, it's actually very, very difficult. But if that speaks to you, then I have a self-protection tip that I want to help you to think about what you do in those situations. So for example, if you become a scapegoat, if you often become a scapegoat, this may also happen in families, in intimate relationships. So you name something that you see as wrong. You then become the scapegoat, so everybody turns their attention on you. This is a form of manipulation. Now, what the ambition is into making you a scapegoat is, 1, to silence you, 2, to make you think you're the problem, and 3, it means that it encourages self-doubt. So that's the 3 things we need to think about. 1 is it encourages self-doubt, doubt of self. It's a way to silence you, and it is also a way to make you, well, silencing and muting you, but it's also a form of manipulation and control. And so if you find yourself in those situations, one of the things that I would encourage you to think about, if you're becoming the scapegoat, if you're the truth teller, if you see nonsense and you name it as it is, and all of a sudden you're getting punished for that, what I would encourage you to think about is what you can do to regain your personal power. Remember, when we feel powerless, that's how we start to feel depressed. And being depressed, I presume, If you want to live your best life, which everybody says they do want to live their best life, then being depressed is not ideal. Yeah. So if you find yourself in situations where you're sanctioned, and this happens in the workplace all the time, it's one of the things we need to be careful about, the hashtag BLM movement, because if you start to name dynamics at work, if you start to say it as it is, then it's highly likely you will experience sanctions and punishment. Let's be real. Let's have the conversation, because being open and honest about the politics and the dynamics that you see can put you in danger, especially when people have power over you. So we have to exercise wisdom. It's not everything we say we must see. Now, people ain't gonna like that, but there's a reality to that. This is one of the reasons why I have a whole raft of clients, because we know in certain situations it's not wisdom to be truthful about what we see and what we experience. It's not wise. So be careful with the BLM movement, because you can be sanctioned for that. And when you're trying to aspire up to get the next level up, the next job up, you may find for some uninteresting reason that you aren't given those opportunities. So in that essence, what would happen is the truth teller becomes the scapegoat. So they'll scapegoat you, they'll stop your progress. And if you're not mindful, it's very interesting thinking about a scapegoat in relation to the BLM movement, but there is a reality to that. And I think if we lose touch with reality, we may well be living in a fantasy where we are under the illusion that it's wise for us to go around and be truthful about prejudice, discrimination, the fact that, you know, you're going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. When you start to name that, remember, you're going to have to deal with the defense. Yes. And the defense can be very profound. And if you're not sturdy, it can knock you off your block. There's no two ways about that. Your girl Key is here to keep it real, because keeping it real is often best for your own well-being. So remember, like I said, when you become a self-scapegoat, what those individuals or people are trying to do is to encourage you to doubt yourself, to doubt your truth. Now, we have to be very mindful about that, because it means if somebody wants you to doubt your truth, they want you to believe their truth. So be mindful that if you are a truth teller, if you say things as you see it, then it's highly likely you will become a scapegoat. And we need to protect ourselves, because living in these times is far from easy. We need to exercise wisdom, thoughtfulness. We need to be able to think things through so we can be mindful about the potential collateral damage. One of the things that you need to be mindful of if you are a truth teller, please ask me any questions, because I could wax lyrical about this topic any day. Inbox me if you need to. I do have my phone here. Is you need to be very mindful of your power. Being able to be empowered is incredibly important. So if you're going to your work, let's just pursue the BLM movement. If you're going to work and now you feel empowered to name the prejudice, the discrimination you're experiencing in the workplace, then be careful, because it's highly likely you'll be sanctioned and become a scapegoat for being a truth teller. Therefore, if you want to name truths, I think what is prudent and helpful to your psychological well-being, to your mental health, as they call it nowadays, I think it is incredibly beneficial that you are mindful about your power. Freedom is not free. So if you go about speaking your truth, there is a likelihood you will be sanctioned. In addition to that, you have to be, I believe, it may well be beneficial for you to think about how you empower yourself. Because people in positions of power, if you're telling truths, people in positions of power will now want to use their power to squash you, to silence you. So it's important for you to now think about, well, if I do X, and this is what can lead you into problems because you may well have been inspired by BLM movements, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement, and now you want to go name dropping the truths and the discriminations you see at work. Well, there's a likelihood that you'll be sanctioned for such honesty. There's no two ways about it. You will be sanctioned for that. Well, no one will really say it, but you'll experience those sanctions. So you have to be very mindful. You have to be conscious about how much you say, because we don't want to make ourselves vulnerable. Next thing you know, there's a round of redundancies, and guess whose name's at the top of the list? So let's not be seduced by this kind of movement of truth telling. Let's not be overly inspired by that, especially if you're coming from a disempowered position where people can use their power over you to squash you, to silence you, and to make you doubt yourself. That is my few tips about being the scapegoat. Truth tellers, people who say it as it is, will often become the scapegoats. And one of the ways that, if you want to be authentic, if you want to be real, if you want to say things as you see them, then my encouragement to you is you need to be empowered, or you need to think about, be conscious of how people will use their power over you to squash you. Because when you name truths and then people start to squash you, that will have a great impact on your greatness. It will have an impact on your mental health. And you need to be mindful about the environment that you find yourself in and how much truths you really want to tell. Because truth telling comes with consequences. It comes with consequences. So be mindful about the circles you move in and how much you do say. One must protect the neck back. One must protect the neck back, because being seduced by the illusion that you should just speak freely and openly could leave you in a highly vulnerable position. It's your girl Key. I'm a psychotherapist. I help people to overcome life dilemmas in order to begin the process of discovering who they truly are. How about you? I hope this video has been of help to somebody out there. Well, it's been of help to me anyhow, because it helped me to pull out 3 ideas about how best to protect people who are scapegoats. Because being a scapegoat is not easy. And let me tell you, you need to hold on to your truth. Hold on to your truth. Don't let the people who try to squash you or silence you diminish your truth. What we have to do is to exercise wisdom so we can make empowered choices, and we are mindful about what we say and who we say it to. That's about being deliberate. It's your girl Key. If you've got any life dilemmas that are getting the best of you and you are struggling to move beyond them, inbox your girl Key. I'm a creative thinker, and even though you may think there is no way, a way can always be found. Take care of you, because if you don't, no one else will, and that's the truth. I said it.